Hey, Artnerds! So, one of the most commonly asked questions I get in my classes and here on this channel involves staging your comic, thumbnailing, composition, that sort of thing. So, I am working on kind of a bonus chapter for Volume 2. All of the main chapters are finished, but I wanted to do a chapter kind of focusing on Naomi and her first day of school. So, I have here the script for that chapter. And I don't talk much about script writing on this channel just because I feel like there's better books and better places where you can learn about that. So rather than like take up that space trying to explain it to you guys, I either talk about it in my classes or I have it on the blog or I can recommend books for you guys. So if script writing and planning your comic is what you're more interested in, this isn't the video for you, but let me know in the comments and I would be happy to hit you up with some better resources. So basically, I have here kind of like a preamble to the chapter, what I want this chapter to hit: new house, new life, new school, what I want it to focus on, high hopes and excitement for a new life, feeling small, feeling lost, and feeling like Naomi doesn't matter, and maybe inspired by shoujo manga like Sailor Moon. So originally I was sort of thinking black and white with some tone in a very cute anime style, something really different from the main body of the comic, and I was even thinking about doing it in a first-person narrative because I really don't do a lot of comics in first person. And I thought that there should be some cognitive dissonance, that Naomi downplays certain negative aspects of her first day of high school, and I want to show that she's perhaps too much of an optimist, and that would kind of play into some stuff that's going to come up in 7-inch Kara later on. So when I'm writing my script, I start with a synopsis. That's just like a really short blurb of what I want each page to have. And once I have the whole synopsis figured out page by page, then I start fleshing it out into panels, into tiers. So I will italicize the synopsis because sometimes this contains important tonal information. And then I'll break it into tiers. And a tier is just kind of like, I'll show you guys in a minute, but a tier is one of my favorite things to utilize for comic craft. And then I break those tiers down into panels. So for example, page 1, the synopsis says, early morning, maybe sun is just starting to peek out into the window. Wow, cannot read, sorry. Early morning, maybe sun is just starting to peek into the window. Alarm on phone goes off. Naomi wakes up bleary-eyed and anxious. Maybe some of her hair is escaping her hair turban. She checks her phone, dashes out of bed, throws on her uniform, grabs ID and bag, washes her face, moisturizers, puts on a little makeup, maybe like lip balm and mascara. Spends a long time fixing her hair according to school guidelines, trying to look cute. So that would be the synopsis for this page. Now some people can do a page just from that. I'm not really an artist so much as I'm a writer who knows how to draw. So I like writing things out and figuring things out for myself first. So then I break it down into tier 1. Panel 1, exterior shot, just outside Naomi's window maybe. The sun coming up, peeking into her window, shaded by banana trees. Now if I was writing this for somebody else, it would be either much looser and I'd let the artist decide, or it would be much tighter and I would dictate everything. But there wouldn't be any of this maybe stuff. The maybe stuff is for me because I am the artist and I'm the writer. Tier 2, panel 2, interior shot, Naomi's room is dark. We can see Naomi's silhouette against the window. Window is bright, but we can see outlines of banana leaves. Tier 3, panel 3, alarm on phone goes up, lighting up immediate area of room and making a lot of noise. So on this page we have 3 tiers and we have 3 panels. And when I'm writing a script, I will break my script down into like each page gets a page. And this leaves room for me to do thumbnails of what I want my thumbnail. So I do pre-thumbnails before I do tight thumbnails. And kind of on that note, I have here several thumbnail sketches of what I want the cover to look like. So this is a chapter about Naomi's first day of school, and this could be an opportunity to explore more Naomi's personality, to show some of her other hobbies. Covers are really fun because they can talk about what goes on, or they can show something that's coming up in the chapter, or they can just show some completely different element of that character's personality, or they can even show an alternate universe version of the character. So covers can be a really fun way to play and add additional elements. And I do everything still by hand, at least for Kara, because I'm crazy. Well, I mean, I do have some digital edited elements, but I like doing the initial sketching and stuff by hand. I feel like I think better that way. So I have a few different cover ideas that I've explored. So I have a couple of shots of Naomi falling asleep at her desk at the first day because the school she starts at 7:20, which is really early. I have some shots of her on her bed doing summer reading or practicing her oboe. I also have maybe a shot of like a behind the shoulder shot of her reading comics on her phone, and then some exploring where she's dressing Pancake up in a banana costume. And this is kind of inspired by a banana costume I have for Bowie that he hates, and I imagine Pancake wouldn't like. So I'm sort of just letting these ideas meld. I'm going to let them just kind of sit and let my brain kind of think on them before I decide on a particular one. So I'm going to try to do the first panel with you guys. And generally I find that if I'm talking, I'm not thinking, which I hate that every teacher I've ever had was right about that, but it's true. If I'm talking, then my brain isn't engaged in thinking, and maybe that's because I am ADHD, or maybe it's true for everyone. I don't know. I have only my own experience to go by. I cannot go by anyone else's. So generally what I like to do, and I have other videos on thumbnailing that if this doesn't answer all your questions, you guys should check that out too. But generally what I like to do is I like to start with kind of a pre-thumbnail, and I use non-photo blue lead to kind of do my initial sketching. And part of the reason I like to do that is those of you who draw with graphite or ball pen probably know you hit a point where you can't see what's going on the page anymore. The non-photo blue lead kind of gives me another layer. Okay, so I zoomed in. So we have some considerations already on this page. We have 3 tiers. Now, tiers are kind of the long horizontal breakups on the page. It's like where you would put your layer panels. So what we need to decide is which tiers are going to take up all the room. Now we only have 3 panels on this page. It's a pretty easy page. So we could do a couple of larger establishing shots, and then this bottom of the page where her phone's going off, we could do kind of a neat like foreground shot of the phone, and then maybe the top of Naomi's pillow, and then maybe Naomi's groggy, tired face. So I'm going to sketch all of this here on like my proto thumbnail, and then I'll sketch it onto my type thumbnail. And you guys might think, I don't know what you guys might think, but that's my method, and it's not the only method, but it's how I work. Okay, so interior shot, Naomi's room is dark, and we can see her silhouette against the window. Window is bright. So we maybe want to have like a sleeping Naomi. And the point of thumbnails isn't let's draw this super tight and super tiny. The point of thumbnails is really let's draw this so that we can understand it and that we can redraw it later. I do draw it fairly tight because I feel like I get my best compositions at this stage. And then we have her window, and she has a large window with curtains, and we have the counterpanes, and then we need to draw like the banana leaves, and I'll redraw them a little bit better later on. And then we can have like the shadows of the banana leaves coming, and that having shadows on Naomi cast from the banana leaves is really going to imply that we have strong light coming in. And then we have our first shot just outside Naomi's window. So maybe we'll pull out a lot. And this is a great opportunity to play around with environments and play around with staging and storytelling. And for me, environments is as important as some of the characters, because your environments are kind of characters in and of themselves. So this house that Naomi lives at, it's actually very much based on the house my mom grew up in. And my aunt ended up living in that house for a while when I was a kid. And my grandfather had designed the house. Another family owns it now. But I don't know, I really like the house, and I really like the idea that, like, you know, my grandfather designed it, and I wanted to kind of honor that, you know, that he did something I think is pretty cool. So having it in the comic is important to me. So, and it had banana trees growing by one of the back windows. And you guys, did y'all know banana trees are not trees? They're a type of herb, actually. So like we have a sketch of our window. That's one way we can handle this page. It's not bad. Let's see if we can do things a little bit more interesting. Maybe we'll pull out a lot. See, this is why I do the thumbnail here on the side of the, like not on my thumbnail paper, because it lets me explore a lot of different options without feeling like I'm tied. And then I can just put the best options on the page. So for me, this is more freeing. This is a little more constraining, but I use this as a template to blow it up for my roughs. Okay, so what if we, instead of having it at 1-point perspective, what if we had it at 2-point perspective? And then we could show some of the fence. So I kind of like how that's going. I really want to pull it out more because I really want to show that it's morning here at this Louisiana house. So pull it out even more. And we'll draw the fence. And I know there's like a tree here because I have a map at the beginning of volume 1. And it's a thumbnail, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Now usually I have the sun setting over here, so having the sunrise over here, like behind the house, would make the most sense. And if I was doing this watercolor, it'd actually be very easy to understand because I can use lighting and color instead of being reliant on black and white. So yeah, I think I like this one most. I'd even have a rooster crow, and believe it or not, in this neighborhood there's still somebody who keeps chickens and roosters. In fact, there's several people who keep chickens and roosters. So having a rooster crow, as corny as it might seem, would not be out of place in this neighborhood. Wow, that would be such a rude awakening for Naomi, who's grown up in the city. So I still like this shot. Maybe I want to pull this one out a bit more. We've already seen Naomi's room in chapter 7. Well, y'all haven't because it's not online yet, but I've already seen, I'm sure y'all have if you follow my Twitter. I've already seen Naomi's room. So I don't necessarily, in terms of like establishing, it's not necessarily that important to establish Naomi's room because it will have just been covered in like a prior chapter not that long ago. So actually, I think I like it like this, and then we can have it her mostly in shadow, and then we can keep this panel the same. So you guys can see how I end up doing a few different iterations before I decide on what to do with the page. Okay, so I'm actually going to, I want you guys to see what I'm doing. There, that's not how I would normally work, but I'm doing it out of love for y'all. So we're gonna give the first tier and first panel a really nice long piece of real estate. Okay, so I should explain this template. This is a fairly commonly used template, and it's scaled for most comic printing. It's scaled, this is like 2 inches by 3 inches. You can scale it up to 6 by 9, which is pretty common for printing trades. I like it, and I use it for my Kara pages. I use it for most of my comic pages. And I can pop a link in the description below for the original creator of this. So this indicates everything that would be safe within traditional printing would not be cut off. This indicates the bleed. That's all additional stuff, additional information that you may or may not want to include, but it may get cut by the bleed. And then this area here is the trim. It's what's absolutely going to get cut off. Like you can count on that. If you're doing a webcomic, you can use this template and not even worry about that because you're going to decide how you want your bleed. And if you're working with publishers, or printers, you're going to decide how you want it cut. And then these hash marks are used to show like where panel borders would normally go. Again, you can change this up. It's just a template. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to sketch all of this in, and then I'm going to pencil it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that in time lapse, because we don't really need to discuss a whole lot about it. Okay, so I've got all the basics kind of sketched in, everything from here. At this point, I could decide to reference some of these things. As I was drawing this, I was like, I don't really know how to draw banana trees. But you know what? That is something I can actually save for my rough stage, which is the stage that I usually do after thumbnails. Now, with some of my comics, I don't bother having a rough stage. I just go straight from like very tight thumbnails to penciling and fixing during pencils. For Kara related stuff, I usually do heavy rough stage because I tend to have a lot of like environments and a lot of perspective going on, even if it's not complicated. And I just prefer to, you know, try and do it right rather than eyeballing it. I've never been super great at eyeballing it. Some people are really good at it. I'm not. Like, whatever it takes to get your comic done is a-okay material, but for me, like, I can't fake it. So I've already gone ahead, I've drawn in my borders. Maybe I want to use this as an opportunity to see if I were going by this bleed, I would have like nothing being shown, but I'm just using this as kind of a basis template. I can always kind of reframe my page a little bit later on. I'm not really concerned about it. So generally what I would do now is I'm just going to start working kind of from top to bottom. So we have here a tree. I think this is actually a pear tree. My grandfather, and this was really prevalent once he moved to the countryside, but my grandfather had like this dream of like anywhere he walked on his property, there was something he could eat or one could eat. And I also really like that idea. My mom's house is a lot like that now because she's got like kumquats and an apple tree, and she just cut down her Bartlett pear, and she has a Japanese fig tree and pecan trees, and I think that's really cool. And when I own my own property, I'm going to really work to have that. I tried doing that here in Nashville, and I am a brown thumb, and the rabbits are out to get me, so I don't fight it. But this is a tree, just in case later when I'm doing my roughs, I'm like, I don't know what that is supposed to be. It's a tree. And sometimes I'll like overdraw it into the gutters. It's not really a big deal. And what that will allow me to do is if I'm digitally correcting it and I want to resize the panel, maybe I'm like, oh, I really want to pull out a lot more, then it gives me more material to work with. So now I'm just kind of sketching in my banana tree, and I'm actually using a B lead and my metal body mechanical pencil, and I don't really use this mechanical pencil that often anymore, except when I'm doing thumbnails. The reason I don't really use it anymore is it has given me arthritis. So, you know, hard metal body pencil, no give. You see I have a nice cushy grip on it. That still hasn't really saved me. So I do know that banana trees have like these paddle-like leaves. So as I'm doing my thumbnails, I'll often make pretty significant changes to the script, kind of depending on, I refer to it as like what my characters dictate, like, or what the events dictate. So, you know, maybe Kara makes a particular facial expression on one page, and I feel like that works well as foreshadowing for another event. So I may end up, this is not what a banana tree looks like, and it's gonna make me nuts. I'm gonna have to look it up. Actually, it kind of is what a banana tree looks like, but definitely not quite. There we go. I can't believe I forgot that. See, that's why reference is so nice. And of course, I will draw it in tighter and cleaner when I'm actually doing the pages. And you don't have to spend this much time doing your thumbnails if you don't need to. One of the reasons I do this is I find the more I draw each stage, the more it kind of saves me time in later stages. Even if I end up redrawing it, I don't know why, but it just makes it so much easier to get like a clear vision of what the full page is going to look like. And some people who work digitally, they just work like directly on top of it, slap a new layer, reduce opacity on the prior layer. That's great too. I'm still not, I do a lot of digital work, but I'm still not comfortable doing my conceptual work on a computer. I'll do it sometimes, but I really find I think best with just like, you know, traditional materials in my hands. Okay, so we got some banana leaves. And we have some banana leaves on the other side. And you can do stick figures at this stage if you want to flesh them out. If you know what your characters are wearing, it can be helpful to do their costume designs at this stage. I kind of go both ways. I kind of waffle between the two, kind of depending on the chapter and what's going on in the chapter and whether I've really settled on the clothing designs, that kind of thing. And I want to make sure, sometimes I'll also draw through like the side of the house, because even though it wouldn't be visible necessarily, it's going to help me later on when I'm doing my perspective grids. And those also can be done digitally, but I also still do those by hand. And maybe we'll just sketch in some grass as like a reminder for later. I mean, we could have even pulled way out and show the sun peeking above her house, but that would also imply it's later in the morning than it really is. And actually, thinking about it, because the sun sets behind her house, the sun would like never be peeking into her window. We all know that when the sun's peeking in the window, that's like storytelling shorthand for, hey, it's morning. So that's kind of a decision you can make. How accurate do you want to be? How much do you care about that? There's always going to be that like one reader, just like there's always that one viewer who cares like 900% about all your mistakes, and they don't really care about all the things you do well. They're just here to point out all the ways you've messed up. So like, if that is a frightening thought, then you definitely want to be more accurate than less accurate. So I'm just kind of sketching in the batting on her quilt. And this can also be, especially if you're doing like a black and white comic, your thumbnails can be an opportunity to kind of figure out where your lighting's going to be. So generally, when I'm working on thumbnails, I work on them in batches of 3 finished thumbnails to this level of tightness each day. And I know that doesn't really seem like a lot. You know, there's some days where I will get more thumbnails done because I want to, but it's really there as like a minimum level. Like I have to do 3 each day. And I've really found that like once I start doing it, once I hit a stride for doing it, it gets easier. And this is a really short chapter compared to some of my other chapters. This is, I think it's at 11 pages, and part of me wants to get it down to 10, but I don't know if I will be able to do that. And then we'll draw the banana leaves, kind of casting shadows, and then kind of sketch in where that would be. So I'm not going to go through all the thumbnails with you guys. There's not really much point to that, and I have other videos where I do thumbnails with y'all. But it's been a while since I've done I think we're done with Intro to Comic Craft. We've introed Comic Craft. We're just making comics now. I don't know what I'm going to title this. Something thumbnails! Exclamation point, emoji, emoji. But, anyway, hopefully talking like this has kind of helped you guys with staging, because I know it's like a big one. People are like, what do I show in my comic? And it's like, I mean, it's a good question. Like, I'm not making fun of them. It is a question I get the most. And I don't mind, but it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's your comic. You know your characters. You know what's going on in your world. You need to show your characters. You need to show their environments. You need to show the objects that are relevant to the story. If you read more comics, you'll get more ideas on what to show. And there's some really good books about, a lot of what we talk about in comics originally came from film and theater. So there's a lot of really good books that kind of talk about it in those terms. Could read those, but like, you'd have to give me your script before I can really tell you what to include on each page, you know? Or I'd have to know your characters a little bit better. Thumbnailing, making comics, it's really about like, try it, maybe fail. Because it's such a low effort thing, like we've put so little time into this. Although this itself could almost be like a really poorly drawn, but it could be a finished comic page, you know. I've added enough detail that you can tell what things are and what's going on, and that's really what's most important too, is like, can you tell who the characters are? Can you tell the difference between one character and another? If there is an important setting, can you tell what the setting is and what the relevant objects are in the setting? I mean, you can do a comic with just shapes. In fact, I think the people who did the Stanley Parable have a comic, or have a video game where they get you to empathize with a square, I think it is. I want to show her like burritoed up in her blanket, because that would be me. Okay, so that is our thumbnail for page 1. So here's something I haven't figured out yet, but I need to leave space for it, is the little time codes in the corner of each panel to show the passage of time. And what I'm basically going to have to do, in fact, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to base it off of when I started Hahnville, and Hahnville would start classes at 7:20, which meant I had to be there at 7, which meant I had to get up at 5:30 because I had to ride the bus for an hour. But Naomi doesn't have to ride the bus for an hour. She can ride her bike over, but it takes her way longer to do her hair than it took me, because I would just like wash it the night before and throw it in a bun. So I need to kind of figure out the time codes before we get to the final version. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to block in where I want the time code. And this can actually just say the time. Which is probably like, what, 5:30, right? Bad fake digital font. So in environmental elements like the phone, you can actually include a lot of information. We could have it say first day, And then maybe put like a pencil emoji. Wow, that's not gonna fit. But like maybe put a pencil emoji on the phone, right? And that's already kind of giving the reader an idea, some foreshadowing, not foreshortening, some foreshadowing of what's happening that day. Because readers love little hints like that. Even if they don't mentally register it, they love little hints like that, especially if it's put in well in the story. So like Naomi could also have a calendar up on her wall right here. Old-fashioned calendar. Some of us still have them. And she could even have like dates scratched out, like she's looking forward to this event. So that's atmospheric storytelling as well. And maybe a big old circle around whatever's going on. So even with thumbnails, you can add a lot of stuff to help tell your story. Okay, so here we have a page with a little bit more going on. So I broke page 1, the synopsis, into like 3 different pages. So page 2, time code still in panels in corners of panels to show passage of time. Tier 1, panel 1, Naomi's hand escaping the blankets to turn off the phone. Pancake getting up and stretching. So that might be hard to show in just one panel. Panel 2, hand snaking phone back into the covers. Panel 3, Naomi sitting bolt upright, holding her phone in front of her face, scaring Pancake. She's bleary-eyed and a little bit anxious. Her hair is escaping her satin turban like she's been tossing and turning. So usually when I have tiers, I do a little hash mark like that to help, you know, me mentally organize what's going on. Tier 2, panel 4, Naomi in the bathroom washing her face, putting moisturizer on, applying lip balm. Tier 3, panel 7, Naomi fixing her hair, school guideline sheet on the counter in front of her. This should take a long time. Panel 8, Naomi looking fairly satisfied in the mirror, maybe making a cutesy face. Panel 9, taking a photo for pictogram, caption, looking cute for the first day of high school, or something silly like that. So we have a page with 3 tiers and multiple panels per tier. So this is finally when I get to explain to you guys what tiers are all about. So we have 3 panels, 3 panels, 3 panels, and we really want to avoid doing like a tic-tac-toe grid on our page. That might happen, but we want to avoid doing that. And the reason we want to avoid doing that is American readers often have trouble knowing whether they should read down or to the side when all your panels are the same shape. Japanese readers through manga, they've been kind of trained in what direction to go through decades of comics using the same kind of formatting, but in American comics, we haven't really, we haven't hit mainstream yet. Okay, so we have our page. Now I want to decide how big I want each tier to be. So I think panel 1, tier 1 is pretty important, so we should give it a lot of space. Tier 2, we can get away with less space because that's all going to be kind of close-up shots, like see you. It's all going to be like head and above. This is the only one where we should show the bathroom. And that's going to establish our space. So panel 4 can be bigger, and then panel 5 and 6 can be smaller. And I'm sorry, I hear a cat getting into something in the background. Needs a reprimand. So let's go back up to this first panel here. So we don't need as much. What I want to do with this is I actually want to have it like an extreme perspective and then have Pancake in the background stretching. So that can be kind of a narrow panel. Then the hand snaking back into the covers can be just show the hand. So an inflected shot. Wait, uninflected, sorry. Because we're not seeing her face, we're just seeing her hand snaking into the covers. And then we can give more room to this last panel. And maybe we should pull up so we can show her, pull out so we can show her scaring Pancake. And then here, So things that take a long time generally have larger panels. And then we could even do a stacked panel here. Because at this point, the reader is going to know there's only one way to go. And see, this is going to be kind of tricky because we got to get a lot of information in this one panel. So we can have the phone off to the bottom. And then pancake way in the background. And then we want to draw that hand snaking back into the covers with the phone. So and I should draw the covers kind of on top of her. That would be pretty cute, right? I think so. So when I'm doing stuff for my characters, people always ask, is Kara supposed to be you? And I hate that question. Like, I hate that question. Like 6 years of getting asked that question. I hate that question. The answer is they're all me. Because I'm always putting stuff from my own life or people I know into my characters. So there is no one character who's me. Yeah, I'm 7 inches tall and 11 years old. Yep, that's me. How did you know? Y'all, I have autobio comics. When I do autobio, I just do autobio. Okay, so not super hot right now on that hand snaking into the cover, but we're gonna move forward with this. And then so I need to draw Naomi sitting bolt upright. Maybe she's cross-legged on her bed. Bowie's trying to force his way into my lap. So it makes it harder to do what I want to do because he's going to claw me. And now he's clawing me. See, I feel like this really needs 2 panels to breathe because it doesn't really read as like, oh, she's shocked, but we'll see. Cat, I don't want you on my lap. And we can even, now he's all caught in my shirt. We can even, sorry, I think I lost you guys. So now we need to show Naomi in her bathroom. And we may end up making this tier smaller. See, this is why we do all this though. It gives us kind of space to figure things out. And you guys can see how, okay, that kind of reads as like something going on in the bathroom. Then putting moisturizer on. So we can do this like it's the reflection in the mirror. And that's kind of a cheap trick that I really like. And I might want to pull out on this one more to show her holding the moisturizer. And then pull in. So we're going to have that push and pull. Some panels are going to be pulled out showing more environment. Some are going to be pulled in more showing facial expression. Probably shouldn't be using her finger. And then Naomi fixing her hair, school guideline sheet on the counter in front of her. So this needs to possibly be because we need to show the counter and we need to show the sink and we need to show Naomi and we need to show the mirror, which will show her face. And that way we can show that she's looking down at the school guideline sheet. So this is a panel that, even though I'm doing the thumbnail here, I'm definitely going to have to spend more time on it later. Just kind of referencing it and researching and looking it up because it's a pretty important panel. This one might be better served if it's shown from this side instead of a profile so we can see more of the face. And this I might need to zoom in or change. So there's a lot going on this page. We have 9 panels to draw. Some of these panels actually have 2 characters technically because we have a reflection going on and many of them have backgrounds. So I'm going to skip around a little bit and skip ahead to the next page. So we have a pretty full page here. There's really no space on this page for us to do our thumbnail. So what I will often do is I'll do a thumbnail on a post-it and stick it on here. So let's go through the page right now. So we have our synopsis. Dad is making breakfast at the stove. Toad in a hole, orange juice for Naomi. He hopes they can eat it together before she heads off to school and he heads off to the hospital. Naomi sitting down at the table, plopping her bag on the table next to her. You didn't have to do all this, Dad. You're going to be late for the clinic. Dad, serving Naomi a plate. Somebody's got to make sure my baby girl has a good start to her first day of school. So that's the synopsis. This is how I broke it down. Tier 1, Panel 1. Shot of kitchen from the door, maybe framed by Naomi's head. Michael is at the stove making breakfast. He's wearing dress pants, a white shirt, and a tie, as well as an apron. Panel 2, Naomi pulls up a chair at the table. And then we have our tier break. Tier 2, Panel 3, Michael places plates on the table, Toad in a hole, and orange juice. Michael, I hope you left time for a hearty breakfast. You want to have energy for your first day of high school. Naomi, you didn't have to do all this, Dad. You're going to be late for the clinic. And then Michael, hand on the back of Naomi's chair. Somebody's got to make sure my baby girl has a good start to her first day of high school. And we can get rid of it here because we already set it up here. Tier break, Tier 3. So this is all one panel. We may decide to break it up into 2. Just kind of depends on how the staging goes. Tier 3, Panel 4, Naomi eating. Michael pulls out his phone, takes a photo of Naomi mid-bite. Panel 5, Naomi reaching for his phone. Aw, Dad, come on, delete that. Michael, you know your papa and Mima are going to want to see their grandbaby starting high school. And Panel 6, shot framed by Michael's hand and phone, framing Naomi. Michael hits send. Naomi groans, rolling her eyes. That might be a little bit much to show in one panel as well. So, again, we have 3 tiers going on. We actually have a lot going on this page. So, let's see if this will show up, and it won't. So, we're just going to go straight in with pencil. Sometimes I'll like put another page in and work on it on the other page as well. So we have 3 tiers. And we have 2 panels in the first tier, 1 panel in the second tier, and 3 panels in the third tier. So it's just kind of our basic page layout sketch. And I find it really helps for me to kind of figure out how my page is going to look. Sometimes though, I will do some of my panels first because I have a really strong idea of what I want the panel to look like, and then I'll do the page layout. But for me, it's often like trying to cram puzzle pieces into a space where they don't fit. So, kitchen from the door frame by Naomi's head. So, gosh, actually, knowing how the kitchen's laid out, the stove is facing the same door Naomi's gonna come in from. So what I can do is have Michael facing Naomi, so he would actually see that she was there, and he could even be holding like a spatula. And then I can have Naomi's head. See, this is why it's important. If you're doing a new environment and you've never done it before, it can be really helpful to have your to do like a floor layout plan or figure out the layout of your room before you. I gotta tell you guys though, the layout of this kitchen is a mess. Like in real life, the layout of this kitchen was a mess because the stove was opposite the fridge. And to me, it's inconvenient, but whatever. Like there was lots of counter space in this kitchen in real life and in the comic. And then there's like a door right here. Okay, so Naomi pulls up a chair at the table. How do I want to do this? So something else about this kitchen is it had really high, like the table wasn't a table, it was like a long countertop with like bar stools at it. And I may opt to pull out more because you can't even see his head. So pull out. And we also want to leave a lot of room because there's a lot of dialogue in this panel. Pull out for that. Pull out for that. And then this one's going to be hard. Maybe not. So what I want to do with this one is I want it to be clear that the panel is mostly the phone with Naomi and then his thumb hitting the button. I've been doing that a lot with this chapter, using the phone to kind of frame what's going on. I kind of like it. Okay, so I have the first 3 pages kind of sketched out. Now I just need to commit our remaining 2 to our thumbnail paper, and I'm going to do that in time lapse. right, so I guess that's about it for today. That's 3 thumbnails, and I also have some potential covers to kind of think over. You guys might have noticed that I got really loose and cartoony down here. It honestly doesn't matter. Thumbnails generally are for you to work from. You're not necessarily going to send them to somebody else. So you can go as loose as you want to go so long as you can understand it. I am going to send these off to a couple of people for some critique, for some feedback. I always feel like I need to improve my staging and I need to improve my storytelling, and I find that sending it to other people for feedback really opens me up to more learning opportunities. And that's one of the reasons why I do really tight thumbnails, is so that they can understand what's going on in terms of staging. It's easier for them to understand. When I was in SCAD, one of my classmates, actually many of my classmates, had really, really loose, sloppy, kind of unreadable thumbnails. And I really feel like if you're sending thumbnails off to somebody else, they should be tight enough that they can understand what's going on without the script. In fact, I prefer for people who beta read my thumbs to not necessarily be familiar with the script, because I want to see if they can still get the general idea. If they can get the general idea, if my comic can still function as a silent comic, then I'm good. I'm happy. So some of these things, especially down here on this page, page 3, where we go into the kitchen, some of these things are definitely going to have to be redrawn a few times. And that's fine. That is what thumbnails is all about. So this is a high table. That's going to be evident when volume 2 is out and I start releasing pages from chapter 7, I want to say. Yeah, chapter 7. It's a high table. It's like counter height table. So like perspective wise, it maybe could even be higher on Michael. The relative heights between Naomi and her dad, I need to be careful about that, make sure I stay consistent. I also need to design Michael. He already has a character design, and I need to age adjust it, and I'm being real squirrely about it because it's a huge spoiler for 7-inch Kara, and I love throwing in, as I mentioned earlier, like throwing in foreshadowing bait. So like I need it to kind of look like him, but enough that people will not know who it is until we hit that reveal. Now down here, that got really cartoony. I understand what's going on. She's reaching for the phone. He's taking photos of her. I may decide to pull out so you can see more of that. I also don't want this to come across as like Michael's taking pictures of Naomi without her consent. It's meant to be more playful than that, and he's only sending it to her grandparents. So, you know, she's like, "Ah, come on, Dad." Not like, "Dad, really, seriously." And hopefully through body language and facial expressions that I'm going to explore more in the rough stage, I can convey that. Because, you know, autonomy and consent, those are really important topics, and I do actually touch on them in Kara. In chapter 7 and chapters 8, Naomi's actually taking pictures of Kara, and Kara's not okay with that, and it gets handled very differently. I think that's important. I think about it a lot as an adult. So I want to make it clear to the younger readers of my comic that it's okay for them to say no, and it's okay for them to not be okay with things like hugs if you're not okay with hugs, or photos being taken of you if you're not okay with that you have the right to say no. So I know I'm getting a little bit deep here, but I definitely don't want that to be confusing just because it's part of the story. So I have, let's see, I'm not doing any more thumbnails with you guys for this chapter unless I really hit something I think is super important to talk about in staging. But I have 11, 3, I have 8 more pages to do. So if I do it at 3 a day, I have about 2-ish, 3, more like 3 days left of thumbnailing to do. So not really bad at all. And other than like some of the tweaks that I've already kind of noted in here, I'm feeling pretty good about these pages. Now, of course, you know, after I send it to my beta reader and after I kind of think about it, I may decide to change things. That's what this stage is all about, is figuring out the look of your comics. So to me, thumbnails are a really important part of making comics. They're a really useful part of making comics. And if you're really struggling with what to include on the page or how much space to give it, creating thumbnails, creating different iterations of your thumbnails can be a really helpful technique that can maybe help you level up your comics game. All right, so I think that just about covers it. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and helping me work on these. I have a whole playlist of comic tutorials here on this channel, Intro to Comic Craft, that you guys should check out. And if you're in the Nashville area, I actually teach 2 comics classes through Nashville Community Ed. I teach Making Comics, which is just kind of a general introduction to comic craft, and I teach intermediate comics now, which is going to introduce students to different techniques like ink wash, watercolor, scanning, lettering corrections, kind of the finesse on our comics. And these are 2 6-week classes, $69 each for the total class, not $69 per class period, but $69 per class package of 6 classes. And we end with a zine exchange. So if you're in Nashville, that could be a really great way to get some comic making experience. It could be a great way to meet other comic artists and to get some guidance from a professional comic artist. If you live in Louisiana, I also teach comic classes through the St. Charles Parish Library System. I usually teach them in winter and in summer. And if you're interested in learning more about my classes and when my classes might be in your area, I think I mentioned it earlier in the video. I'm so sorry if I did, but I have a mailing list for my classes, and I also have just kind of a general behind the scenes mailing list that you guys can sign up for. Both are totally free, and both will give you a little bit more information either about my classes or what it's like working as an artist. So thank you guys. Oh, losing my voice there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys again really soon, and I will check in with more of this untitled yet, I guess I should say, as of yet untitled, Naomi bonus comic from my comic 7-inch Kara, which you guys can either check out volume 1 from your local library. If they don't have it, it would be a huge favor if you took a moment and filled out a library request form so they can get a hold of it. It costs you nothing but time. You can also, if you like it already, you can order it from my shop at let's see, natosoup.com/Kara. Don't worry, I'll put a link in the description below. And you can read it for freezies at 7inchkara.com and 7inchkara.tumblr.com. So I will see you guys again with another comic related video really soon. Bye guys! Okay, art nerds, so I finished thumbnailing this bonus Naomi chapter. There's still a few things I need to do. I need to decide which illustration I want to use as my cover, and then I'm going to use another illustration probably from this set as a bit of a buffer because I have a double page spread in here that I want to take into account. So we did the first 3 thumbnails together, so I'm sure those will look familiar to you guys. And that's where I showed you guys how you could just use a post-it note if you've run out of room for layouts. But I wanted to show you guys some of the other thumbnails I did. Now they're gonna have, these need a lot of work. There's a lot of pulling out I need to do, a lot of restructuring I need to do, but that's okay. Thumbnails are really about capturing the visual essence of the story. They are just one of the stages in creating a comic. They're not even the finished stage. So the fact that there's a lot that's kind of left hanging isn't really a big deal. It's just enough to allow me to make further progress. So here we have Naomi returning from school, trudging into a room to get changed, then coming back outside while Pancake is enjoying playing with the birds. This could probably benefit from being flipped. Then she's kind of fallen asleep outside on the stairs when she gets a text message. It does not make her day, but don't worry, Pancake cheers her up a little bit. Then Kara comes to visit and they chat a little bit. And she tells Kara about her first day at school. And originally in the script, this went on for like 4 pages. And I just realized how much that was going to drag for the readers, many of whom are young readers, and many of them are not here for a high school drama. So I decided to cut this way back. It was 2 pages. What I ended up doing is I really liked how the layout turned out, and I didn't want to redraw it. So I scanned it, I brought it into Photoshop, kind of re-templated it, resized a few things for scale, and then I printed it out and then finished drawing it. So that kind of saved me some time from redrawing it. So if you're comfortable working digitally, working entirely digitally can be a great way to go with your thumbnails. And then here is the final page, and I may decide we're going to end up with 12 pages total if I add in the buffer page, but I usually like adding kind of a nice uninflected page at the end, just to kind of resolve everything and to leave the readers with like a sense of, I guess, peacefulness is kind of what I'm thinking about. So I may draw her and her dad just kind of like, you know, hanging out together, front view on the couch. But basically, my thumbnails are done. So the next stage is going to be to scan everything, do a bunch of digital corrections, print it out, and then do my roughs. And my roughs are going to include my perspective. In between then, I'm probably going to hash out the rest of my environmental and character designs as well. So if you guys are interested in that, there may be videos forthcoming on those topics. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for joining me for another comic creation video, walkthrough, what have you. I hope this gets you fired up to start drawing your own comics. Remember, it can be as simple, as basic as just stick figures. Anything is a start. You can definitely tell a compelling story with stick figures. You can tell jokes with stick figures. XKCD is an excellent example of just how much can be done with just stick figures. Stories for Sad Children and The Oatmeal are also really good examples if you'd like to make your own comics and you just don't have any drawing ability at all. So I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this was helpful, useful, and informative. And I hope you guys will keep an eye out for the upcoming 7-Inch Kara Volume 2 Kickstarter. I could definitely use your help and your support and your encouragement with the Kickstarter. So keep an ear out for that. Alright guys, I hope you'll have a wonderful day. Bye!